Liquid transfer solutions? I mean, that makes me think of like what, like cash transfer? Like what, like the like wires or what?
Hey, then brace
You
yourself.
say liquid, I think of like finance, like
It was pipes and hoses. Now think about this from an SEO perspective, right? All over their website, liquid transfer solution. Today, we're going to be talking about two topics that are very dear to my heart: copywriting and artificial intelligence. Indeed, we're going to be talking about how to write profitable copy with AI. And to help us do that, I have with me Jacob McMillan, aka the Cyborg Writer. He's an 11-year copywriter and solopreneur focused on combining human genius and AI to create remarkable, profitable writing. And he's about helping you do the same. Jacob, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
In sunny San Diego, California, while I'm stuck in freezing cold Melbourne wearing my Pikachu sweater.
10 for 10 sweater, by the way.
Thanks, man. So how did you get into copywriting? How did that begin?
So that started kind of at the end of college. I took a web design class. And after I had the website up, it was like, okay, what do you do now? How do you get people to the website? And I kind of came across SEO. And I knew that, hey, people are searching in Google for stuff, then they want to find it. So I was like, okay, I should try to kind of learn some SEO so I can send people to this site I just made. And that led to my opening job, which was the second hire at a small little SEO agency for local businesses. And pretty quickly, like literally 2 weeks into being there, I realized a big chunk of what they outsourced was writing. They'd have these content mills that they would have, for their roster of clients. They'd get like 10 articles a week or something. And they were paying me like, I think $12 an hour or something, to do some various like VA type work. And so I was looking at this and I was like, I'd always been a good writer. And I was like, why are they having these content mills send them awful content and then having me edit it when I could just create better stuff to begin with and probably make more per hour? I was like, if I can do, they'll pay me $15 per article. They're paying like 12 right now. So a little bit more to get better quality. I'm kind of just scheming. Like, if I can do two in an hour, I can get paid $30 an hour. Like, that'd be crazy money for, and so I pitched them on that, like my second week there, and they went for it. And so I started doing like 40 articles a week, just churning it out. These were like 500 word, articles on pest control, carpet cleaning, stuff like that. And then this was like a part-time job. So I just kept looking for other work as well that could potentially pay a little more. And I started finding there were other SEO companies that needed, blog posts. And then I found one that was asking, they're like, hey, have you ever done landing page copy? And I was like, what is that? What is copywriting?
Wow.
And I had done door-to-door sales to pay my way through college. And so when I started looking into copywriting, I was like, wait, this is just asynchronous sales. And I had been very good at sales, but I didn't want to go that direction in my career because I didn't like the feeling of when I'd sit down with someone one-on-one in that context and pitch them, if it felt like a good fit and they didn't buy, I'd feel like super negative towards them. And I did not like that feeling. I didn't, and so I was like, I can't do sales. And so when I found copywriting, I was like, hey, this is everything I liked about sales and was good at sales with, but it's asynchronous. So I don't have that direct interaction. There's no like feelings involved. I'm just anticipating what they're thinking. If they buy, they buy. If they don't, they don't. I'm not going to know. I already wrote the copy. So, since then I've gotten a lot more comfortable doing direct sales within the context of being, a professional service provider, offering something I feel genuinely good about. But at the time it was like, okay, this kind of taps into something I already know, something I'm good at in terms of the writing, just being a decent writer. And pretty quickly I found there was this huge market for this. This was back in like, 2012, I think. And like there weren't a ton of freelance copywriters on the scene at that point. Like there still were some, but it was like you had this boom in e-commerce. So you had companies springing up all around the world looking for help with messaging. And so I just kind of hopped into that and never looked back, did that freelance for 7 years before I start finally, being a little slow, finally caught on. Hey, if everyone's paying me to write stuff for them, they're making more money than I am off of it. They're making a profit off this. So why don't I build some of my own content driven businesses and make the money directly? And that's kind of what I've done from there.
And as well, the course bit as well too. Hey, when you mentioned the landing pages before, because my first big business was a print magazine made of paper and ink that used to get sent to people's houses.
Yes.
And sold in Borders bookshops and places like that.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
We used to send subscription letters, right? Trying to get people to subscribe. And then when everything went online, I remember, again, like you, someone said, oh, this is a landing page. And I'm like, what's a landing page? And they're like, oh, it's a page to sell something. People use expressions like squeeze pages and all these different cool terms. And I was like, oh man, that's just like direct mail copy, but it's on one page, and I can actually go longer and include more data and more information and more facts and more touch points.
And split test it immediately instead of having to wait every launch cycle,
3 months. Yeah, 3 months. Yeah, to be able to properly split test something in those days. I got to say, guys and gals out there, if you're ever in a secondhand bookshop and you stumble across a book on direct mail, like how to write those letters that used to appear in people's, the letter boxes, and there'd always be a page with a really strong call to action at the top, a lot of copy, a half-finished sentence on page 1, because, with ... and then PTO, because then you'd have to turn it over. And when I learned that little trick, it drove me nuts, because I'd always want to finish the sentence on the page. No, ... turn it over. But if you ever find one of those books, buy it, because it's a masterclass on how to write web copy.
It's just like LinkedIn, you make those first 2 lines where they have to click read more to see the end of the thought.
This is why Jacob's on the show, because this is the way that he thinks. Yeah. Most people with their LinkedIn profile don't think that way. They think, how can I inform people about everything that I can do as quickly as possible, rather than drag them into our world?
And direct mail's making a comeback too, by the way. There's a lot of, particularly, both B2B and B2C businesses in the US are starting to use it more heavily, because it's cyclical, it's just wherever everyone's focusing, you go find something else that you already know works, and it's dropped off, and that's the sweet spot.
When everybody zigs, you zag. And the other thing about it is just, I know at this moment, one of the most valuable things that you can have in your business is attention. It's getting harder and harder to get people's attention. And if you can invest a little bit of time to get people's attention, you're always going to be ahead of everyone else in your space, because everybody's competing for that attention. So let's talk about how to write profitable copy with artificial intelligence. And you've got 3 things that are good things to get right. Where do you want to begin?
Yeah, so I've kind of just put together sort of, over the last 2 months, really ever since GPT-4 was launched. When GPT-4 came out, I was like, this is a generation defining moment. I'd been playing with GPT-3 since it came out. I invested in the seed round of some tools built on top of it. And up till GPT-4, to me, it was interesting, but it didn't really change much. And GPT-4 just changed everything in my day-to-day as a copywriter. I don't write copy without AI anymore. And so I've been focusing heavily on that since it came out, and trying to figure out, how do we practically apply this to the same deliverables we were targeting before? And so I've kind of condensed most of the interesting and useful things I found into sort of 3 different ideas that I wanted to share on this call.
And let's make it clear. Tools like this, they're not about replacing people, even though they will replace jobs, because Jacob here is a kick-ass copywriter, and he's using these tools. It's the same way that a carpenter used to use, a carpenter originally would use rocks to sharpen, to make a spear. Then they got metals, then they became better metals, and now they can do a carpenter can do amazing things because of their amazing tools, but the carpenter is still the artisan behind the piece of work. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I compare it to like a calculator, you know, in the sense that a calculator sort of made the raw skill of mental math kind of obsolete, but it didn't make the application of math obsolete. You know, like it changed nothing about what makes math important to the society we live in. I kind of see it similar, like the ability to just, I mean, up to this point, a big part of why copywriters existed was because a lot of people struggle with basic written communication. You know, you have a business owner who they can give you the most compelling elevator pitch you've ever heard. The moment they sit down and try to put that elevator pitch into writing, it just comes out terrible. They just couldn't do the basics of translating a mental or spoken idea into writing. And so that was like, I would say 75% of the writing services market was just helping people do that, just basic communication. And that's kind of going the way of the calculator in the sense that like now people have this tool through ChatGPT and whatever the future iterations of that are to much more efficiently and effectively communicate what they want to say through writing at a basic level. Now, that does not in any way devalue the ability to sell things through writing or the advanced applications of writing within marketing and sales. Like there's a lot more beyond the calculator. There's a lot more beyond ChatGPT that still exists. But in terms of just, you know, in terms of the ability to just have to learn the skill of basic written communication, I don't think people are going to have to learn that anymore. I think AI is going to kind of fill that gap.
Well, I know that even with a calculator, the other day, I was trying to work out the percentage growth of our monthly recurring revenue for our SaaS business. And I couldn't figure it out with the calculator. I actually went into ChatGPT and I said, I'm trying to figure out this. I've got this growth this month, this growth. What's the average growth over the 3 months? And it told me. Hey, just for fun, Jacob, about a decade ago, we were running a workshop and it was on online marketing. And one of those amazing entrepreneurs that can clearly articulate what they did gave me their written elevator pitch. I can't remember whether it was a mission statement or a branding statement. And I'm going to tell you what they said they did, and you tell me what their business does. All right? This is what they said. They said, we are a leading provider of liquid transfer solutions.
Liquid transfer solutions? I mean, that makes me think of like what, like cash transfer? Like what, like the wires or what?
Hey, then brace yourself.
You say liquid, I think of like finance, you know, like
it was pipes and hoses. Now think about this from an SEO perspective, right? All over their website, liquid transfer solutions, and everybody's going into Google and they're writing noses. No one's writing liquid transfer solutions.
We get water from here to there.
Yeah, that's right. We get water from here to there.
Oh man.
All right. So AI, how to write profitably with AI. What's the first tip that you want to give us?
So the first thing that I think is the number one thing people need to know about using, and I'm going to say ChatGPT specifically here, although I think it applies to multiple tools. But to me, ChatGPT plus using GPT-4 is the gold standard by leaps and bounds right now. You get the most value from ChatGPT via an interview approach, not via an initial prompt. And the reason I think this is really important to state is because, you know, selling prompts is like kind of the new, like, it's like the new altcoin, you know, the new NFT, like it's the latest thing that the low effort entrepreneurs online are using to make quick bucks from people who don't know better. Like the prompt packs, here's 2000, you know, essential prompts. Like the whole design of those products is to just overload you with worthless information to where, you know, by the time you realize just how useless it is, you're well past the refund window, you know, like.
But by the way, radical transparency. We have an opt-in gift that's been crushing it, which is 150 ChatGPT prompts. But they are prompts that I use myself. And by the way, you said the interview style. We're talking about the conversation style.
Hey,
or we talking about prompt stitching, like put these prompts in a row.
Yes. Prompt stitching is big. And I think prompts as a free lead magnet makes sense. I see these people bragging about how much money they're making selling them. And I'm just, I don't know. it's something. But the way I like to illustrate this is like, and I think you'll resonate with this as someone who interviews people. If you've ever heard a really poor interview, it usually goes something like this. The host shows up with their pre-written questions. They ask a question, the person responds, and the person maybe mentions something really interesting. And the listeners are listening to that going, ooh, I want to hear more about that. And instead of the interviewer going, tell me about that, they're like, and then they nod, then they look back and go back to their next question.
They say, interesting.
Interesting.
And then they go to the next question.
Exactly. And you can have the most fascinating guest in the world on that show, and it is going to be a worthless interview because like there's no follow-up. And by contrast, you can have you have interviewers who, like most of the best interviewers, the thing they're good at is asking good initial questions and, more importantly, good follow-up questions. And so to me, that's where you get the most value out of ChatGPT. It's not to say there's no value in the initial prompt. Obviously, the starting point is always important, but the follow-up is where you really pull the extremely useful stuff. The stuff that goes from like, this is interesting, like, oh, wow, look what AI can do, to like, I just put this into a piece of copy that's making me money right now. And there's just so much hype around this space from people who are not making money with it, selling stuff or communicating stuff to other people who will not make money from it. And so I'm like trying to laser focus on how does this actually connect to the things that we were doing to make money before AI and the things we will continue to do now that AI is here.
Yeah, I'll give you a really good example. So we've been helping some of our clients write ebooks using AI.
Totally.
And the first thing a lot of people do is they say, ChatGPT, give me some headlines or something like that, right? Here's my target audience and give me some headlines. We'd always begin with, if this is my target audience and I do this, what are the 5 biggest headaches that this audience has during their working week? And then it will come up with 5 big headaches. Then I've got another prompt that I use where I say, okay, give me 3 how-to headlines for each of those 5 headaches. I end up with 15 headlines.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, it's the same with a calculator. If you don't know maths, you can't use a calculator well. But if you understand marketing and copywriting, I can start with, let's start with a headache. Then I'll say, let's start with a how-to headline. And I much prefer how-to headlines because otherwise, people give me opinions. People will pay for instruction, but they won't pay for opinions. Or as I once said elsewhere, would you pay Tiger Woods to help you with your golf swing or his opinion on the PGA? You would not pay for his opinion. You wouldn't do it. But the next one is the most important bit because you get 15 headlines. And this is the listening bit and the paying attention bit. You need to look at them and you go, this is the one that's going to resonate. This is the one. And this is where black arts and science comes together, where only you as the human being can go, oh yeah, that there is going to punch them in the gut. That there is going to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like another way I illustrate that is ChatGPT can write code. I couldn't develop an app using ChatGPT, even though plenty of coders are using it to develop apps. And the key is because I wouldn't know what to ask it to do. And I wouldn't know how to evaluate if it was any good once it gave it to me. It could give me a perfectly written, app, and I would have no clue what to do with that because I know nothing about coding or developing. And it's the same way with like copy through ChatGPT. If you don't already have an idea of what good copy is or what resonates with people, you're going to have no way of looking at what ChatGPT gives you and doing anything useful with it. And that's why, to me, like kind of my focus again is the crossover between understanding what you're trying to do from a marketing perspective and then adding AI to that actual workflow. So they're very tied together. I don't think AI by itself does a whole lot for anyone. And at this point, because of how much potential, how much power it has, in 5 years, I don't think you're going to have successful marketers that aren't using AI to some capacity. So I think it's going to end up being a combination of the two.
Back to the carpenters trying to get by with rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's too many of them left. This is what I need to say. Interesting. Because I've been waiting for that moment. Because the interview model is the first piece of advice, and that's great. Rather than try and hit them up with a prompt, for me, it's like a conversation, pretending I'm talking to a smart 11-year-old or a smart 14-year-old. What's the next piece of advice that you like to give?
You already hit on it, which is kind of the chaining together of stuff, and beyond just the interview style. The way I like to, I guess what I like to call it is more like seeding. So there's kind of two different ways where you can preemptively seed a ChatGPT thread to give you a better outputs as you start to prompt it. So the first way, and this actually came about from me trying to tackle what I sort of consider the holy grail output of copywriting, which is sales page writing. Like how do you write a sales page leveraging ChatGPT? And what I found is that I can basically like hop into ChatGPT, describe what I'm trying to do, describe, the product I'm trying to sell, who I'm trying to sell it to, and then say, give me a question, ask me 20 questions about this to give you the information you need to help me write a great sales page. So I basically have it create the questionnaire for me. Then I answer all the questions. And it's funny too. This is kind of a random aside, but I've noticed that some of the questions that it does seem very directly connected to my copywriting questionnaire, which has been the #1 search result in the US for copywriting questionnaire for the last 5 years.
Wow.
So I'm going to take some credit for anyone who
do you think it's successfully. There's all these questions about copyright and everything. Do you think it's like looked at the most popular pages and it said that these are the ones?
Well, you can actually, there's a website where you can check to see what percentage of the database that ChatGPT used incorporated, like how much of that your website made up. So like my website made up I think 0.003% of the database that it used to train itself,
That's still pretty, that's still a reasonably high number. Just as an aside, I wonder your opinion on this. I've got me and my business partner, Simon. I've got Simon, the tech co-founder, and John, the sales co-founder. But we believe that the future of AI is probably going to involve some sort of privately hosted AIs trained using proprietary content. So, for example, there will be Jacob McMillan .ai. Do you think that that's a probable or possible future?
Well, that's what all the writing tools are doing, so like you got the leader right now, I think, is Jasper, which has over $1 billion valuation. And basically what they've done is what all those companies are doing, Jasper, Wordsmith, Copy AI, they create their own proprietary human written models that layer on over the top of GPT-3, GPT-4. And so they're kind of already doing that. Obviously, the further iteration of that is not needing to rely on someone else's language model. But yeah, I absolutely think that's the direction everything's heading, for sure.
So I guess it's like you find someone who's a smart 18-year-old, and that's ChatGPT, and then you educate them on the thing that you're profoundly good at. And then it's like them going through 5 years of college and 10 years on the job, and then they're suddenly as proficient as you.
Exactly. And that's kind of we're kind of what I was just mentioning with seeding a thread. It's a very primitive version of that. And kind of one other thing I wanted to mention with seeding, that I think maybe one of the more practical things I mentioned here, immediately practical things, is that if you've ever noticed, if you just kind of output, or if you just ask ChatGPT for something, it typically delivers its outputs designed to be within kind of read in isolation. So like if you ask it to write a section of a landing page for you, it's going to give you a section that assumes there's no previous or post. It's going to try to bake in like the introduction and the conclusion within the section you're asking it to write. So one of the advantages of seeding is that you can ask it to give you an outline for the page. So like what I do with the sales page process and with blog posts and other things as well is I'll ask it to create an outline for the page that I've told it I want to write. And then either I'll go with the outline it gives me, or I'll adjust it and add that outline back into ChatGPT. And then as I'm asking it to write sections, I can ask it to write a specific section of that, and it's going to write that section within the correct context that it's supposed to be on the page, instead of trying to like force it as its own standalone piece. And so kind of that interplay of seeding something and then you referencing it later allows you to get content in context and content that can reference a lot of information at once, even without you having to respell it all out in the prompt.
It's interesting because, we're talking about an online tool, and the more that we talk about it, you said we're gonna interview it, right? And then I said, oh yeah, we treat it like a conversation. And then you're like saying, well, we need to seed the thread, which is almost just like giving things context. So really, it's once again no different to speaking to your 22-year-old intern, sitting down and saying, okay, well, how much do you know about this particular topic that we're going to write about today? What do you think would be a good way to address it? And what do you say? Can you give me a bunch of questions that I need to answer?
Yeah, I would actually compare it less to talking with an intern and more talking to like a marketing consultant.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to have necessarily the ability to pull out. It can't make connections the same way as a marketing consultant can, but in terms of just writing the copy, it's like if someone were to hop on with me and say, hey, I'm trying to write a sales page. Can you help me write the sales page? The first thing I'm going to do is ask them a bunch of questions, right? Like, tell me about what you're trying to do. And it's the same thing, like you get it to ask you the questions that it thinks you need. And granted, if you really know how to put together a good questionnaire, you don't even need to do that. You can just seed the answers directly in. But I think it does a pretty good job of creating the questions in the first place. And after working with, thousands of business owners over the course of my career, usually small business owners, even like mid to larger size, like knowing what questions to ask does not necessarily come easy. Like it's real easy to get a little, too thick into the weeds that you sort of miss the forest for the trees when you're thinking about what to ask yourself about, what information you need to write the copy. So I think asking ChatGPT to do the questions, for most people, they're going to get better questions than they would come up with themselves.
I think as well too, what you're describing is actually work. And a lot of people, when they look at this, they go, oh yeah, I'm going to throw in, one command and I'm going to get some stuff. No, I mean, like this is, once again, it's if you want a great result, you put in the work, which is why you hire a consultant, or it's, why if you're going to use a tool like this, you might hire a consultant to then use a tool like this. Or if you want to do it yourself, it's going to require work. Suck it up, guys and gals. Success requires effort.
You can build a multi-million-dollar business off of like 5 creatives and a landing page, like the right funnel, like it's worth the work.
Worth the work.
The upside is so big on getting a sales page and a few ad creatives, right? That, I think anyone going into that, putting a sales page together, not expecting it to take some work is kind of, pursuing a fool's errand.
Yeah. You've got to put the effort in to get the outcome, but it's where you put the effort in, and that's something called leverage. So number one, we want to interview the bot. We want to seed the thread. What else do we want to do?
I think the last thing is just staying hyper-focused on the objective with each interaction that you have with AI. Again, one of the common things that I see happening is people play with AI and make assumptions about what it can or can't do based on really irrelevant stuff to their actual workflow. And so one of the things that I really focus on and really encourage in my AI writing community is to stay hyper-focused on anything that you try, any tool that you test, anything that you're doing. actually attempt to apply it to a real day-to-day workflow that you're actively doing and see if it can assist. And the same thing, like when we're talking about the interview, like just thinking through, what am I actually trying to accomplish with this specific section I'm getting it to write, or the specific output I'm trying to reach? Because like, there's times where like you ask ChatGPT for something, and for say like we're writing the piece of the copy where we're really resonating with the problem that people are experiencing. So we ask ChatGPT to write that. They do an okay job, but it's not really something you'd actually put onto the page. It's more just maybe a few points you could spin off. A lot of people stop there. But if you take the interview approach and the objective, staying focused on the objective, you come back in and you say, rewrite this section and really lean into the emotion of this, this, and this, and describe it in the first person. And I had it write a problem section the other day that I'm now, granted, I'm in the target audience. So like, it was personally relevant to me. And I was blown away. Like, it was using some lines that I would have never come up with that really hit home. Like really forceful language, like stuff that really tapped into my emotions and situations I've dealt with. And I was like, holy shit. This is publish ready right here, like maybe not start to back, but there's like at least 10 or 12 heavy hitting lines in there that I just got with a click, that normally for me to come up with copy that would have had this much of a punch, we're talking hours of brainstorming. So it's really wild.
Because what we would do is we have these online forms that people complete when they want to get like a free opt-in gift, or they sign up for a new course or whatever. And gratuitous plug alert, we use b2b-.io to collect that information. But there's a question that we often have called the SMIQ, which comes from Ryan Levesque, who wrote a book called The Ask Method. And SMIQ stands for the single most important question. And you say, when it comes to getting outcome, what's the single greatest challenge holding you back right now? And people drop, about 10 to 20% of people actually reveal what's going on in their minds. The other 80% write words like time or just ignore it, right?
Yeah.
But that 20%. What I'm thinking now is that there is a long and arduous process, right? But we get some great insights. What I'm thinking now is that I'm imagining a world where you combine the two, where you say, what do you think are going to be the emotional triggers, Mr. or Mrs. AI? But then when you were talking about those questions, you can seed it with all these different perspectives and answers that real humans have given you. And you can say, what do you think are the key points that I should have in my copy?
Yeah. 100%. And just to add to that, like something that I'm really big on is when you're getting the information that you would answer the questionnaires with, like the stuff about what are your customers concerned about? What problems are they wanting to solve? What benefits are they looking for? The only significantly worthwhile information to have with that is real customer feedback from people who are actively paying you money. Everyone in the world has an opinion. The only opinions you should ever care about are from the people who have actually paid you for what you're doing. And that feedback is 10 out of 10 when it comes to writing sales copy. The best copy I've ever written, the best copy anyone has ever written, has been pulled straight out of the customer's mouth. Now, the reality is a lot of the projects that we'll do, you don't have any customer feedback initially, like whether you're pivoting into a new product, whether you are starting a new company. There's a lot of situations where we don't have that available. We can look at similar companies, we can look at other communities, but in reality, they're not 100% transferable. And so when you're looking to kind of find some initial data to work with, this is another place where AI can be super useful in the sense that it has access to a huge chunk of the internet. And so instead of spending hours looking up information that ultimately will only be about a 3 out of 10, you can get that 3 out of 10 in like 30 minutes using ChatGPT or something like Perplexity AI or Bing that will actually find like real conversations like on Reddit or different communities and pull out the takeaways as well as link you to the actual conversation.
Yeah, I think that if you guess, you can get it like a 3 to 5 out of 10. You might use a tool like that, and it might be a 6 or 7 out of 10. If you're using your own customer data, that's even more powerful. When someone buys a product, when someone buys a product from us, we have a question that we ask among about 12 questions. But the question that we have, and this is a great one for everyone at home, is what was the one thing that almost stopped you buying this product today? And it's crazy because they just dropped all the reasons why they weren't going to buy. And then
that's
and then
good. That's a good question.
FAQs, that's like, it goes in the emails the whole bit.
Oof. I'm stealing that. I'm adding that into my feedback forms for sure.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Now, before we wind up, let's talk about SEO for a little bit. I mean, like it's everybody's in these constant arguments and disagreements, and Jacob doesn't know what's going on in Google or at Bing, and I don't know what's happening within the large search engines of the world. But how are these search engines like Google and Bing reacting and responding to AI produced content?
So one of the things that I'm not surprised about, that I think was inevitable, is Google announcing we're not going to proactively penalize AI use. Like, it's more about quality. And I think that was inevitable because, one, they can't tell. Like with GPT-4, they cannot tell. I think that's another. AI detectors do not work on GPT-4. They worked on GPT-3. Nobody can tell what's going on with GPT-4 unless these language models proactively add like metadata that will let you know. There's no way to tell. So
it's back to the way that they were anyway, which is quality is going to be key.
Exactly. And the other thing, to me, the significance of GPT-4, what makes it a generation defining tech, in addition to just the way it allows people to approach written communication like a calculator, it's going to change the way that we interface with the sum of human knowledge as represented by the web. Like the ability to hop into this chat and get the type of hyper-specific information that would have taken quite a bit of creative Googling, like it's a game changer, and it's going to change the way, we're still just on the cusp of that. I think people overestimate the future growth of the language model itself. I think GPT-4 already got us about as close to the fruition of that as we're going to get. I also think AGI, how OpenAI, how close they are to AGI is wildly overhyped. I don't think we're anywhere close to AGI. And I'm not an expert, but it's something I've been thinking and looking and researching about a lot for years, well before the kind of mini AI revolution we're in. People just don't understand what AGI actually is. And so that's wildly overhyped. But what is kind of underrated, this changes everything about search, changes everything about how we interface with databases. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know Google has kind of been a shit product for years. Like Google stopped being, like, the value Google provides stopped being relevant, like proportional to the market share they command years ago. People are, I kind of think of it like the way COVID accelerated the timeline of work from home versus in office. I think ChatGPT has accelerated the journey to Google not really being a significant player in search. That's I recognize that's a little bit of a hot take, but we'll see if they can keep up. They have all the data to be able to be the leader. Whenever a company has as big of a hold on something as Google has had over search, they're never incentivized to be on the forefront of new tech. They always end up being the Goliath that gets outpaced. So I think that's what's going to happen to them. We'll see. Again, if they decide to go after it, they have all the advantages to get there. But search in 5-10 years, how people look for things online I don't think it's going to be even remotely the same to how we've been doing it the last 10 years. Like TikTok started it, and ChatGPT is going to the incorporation of AI, which again, all these algorithms have been using AI, but I think search is headed in a whole different direction that none of us really know what it's going to look like.
And then even SaaS tools like the one that we've got, there's a model that people call the imperative model, or that's what programmers call it, because it's step by step. You sign up for some new software as a service and it tells you what to do step by step. Then you've got the extension of that, which is the gamified imperative model. And that's where you've got like badges and you've got dials, and it like pushes you through and it makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Makes chirping sounds. And the next evolution is going to be this this directive model, and you log in and you just like tell it what you want it to do, and it sets itself up for you or gives you the data that you want on the spot. It's going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Now, speaking of mind-blowing and minds, Jacob has the Right Minds community. It's a community of ambitious writers mastering AI to create profitable businesses, launch creative projects, and impact the future. And you can learn more about that at jacobmcmillan.com/right-minds. And of course, I'm going to include a link somewhere below this. And Jacob doesn't know this yet, but we're going to work together, Jacob and I. He doesn't know this yet, to create an amazing lead magnet, a gift of high-perceived value to you guys and gals, which will be the intersection between copywriting and AI. And when that's done, we'll put a link beneath this this video or this podcast, wherever you're consuming this content to. We're going to do that.
I'm in. Totally.
We're in. Awesome. Thank you, Jacob. This has been so much fun. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. Super fun convo.